Nation. Welcome to the first edition of Perimeter Fires. Conversations with people in and around this extraordinary experience, unlike anything else in the world. Like that there. And
Yeah.
our first conversation around the Perimeter Fires is going to be Gabe Bock. So, Gabe Bock, Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2003, journalism major. And Gabe, I'm gonna make hopefully what's not too long of an introduction here. I want everybody to know exactly who you are. Gabe, outstanding Aggie. We'll get into everything with respect to the fire. And I also wanted to open with a bit of an apology, Gabe. I
Uh-oh.
know that I've been blowing you up for weeks.
No. It was my fault. We should have started this like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, and see,
Mrs.
and
Box
this is,
got me too busy.
hey, well, and that's, I hear that. But the thing is, and I want you to know, this is very intentional. I could have recorded other podcasts in between, but it was very important to me that you be the first conversation, not the first one released, but the first conversation, because going back to 2012, I believe, when Jackie Sherrill was going to be the Burn Night speaker, first time I believe that we were on TexAgs,
Hmm.
in studio with you, and from that time, I'm impressed with people that love something that I thought that I liked until I saw them do it and realized I just appreciate it, right? And to see you in the studio, I don't know if you've caught, but in some of the broadcasts, you could probably see me peeking over and looking at your notes and your preparation and your commitment. And I didn't read everything, but there were certainly some notes that
Sure.
I saw that went, he is paying attention.
Mm.
And so you're a
Thank you, brother.
master. You're a master of talking with people, a master of absorbing what's going on around and bringing it to other people. A prism, almost. You're a prism of white light turned into a maroon to white spectrum, right? An
Wow.
outstanding
Wow.
Aggie conversationalist. Yeah,
Well,
put that on your brand.
coming from you,
Yeah.
which is probably one of the most eloquent writers I've ever been around, and actually, and I think we could probably get behind the curtain a little bit, have probably consulted me on every single piece I've ever tried to do that involved Bonfire. So much so as probably co-wrote the intro to the oral history and the 20-year reunion, right, of the
Right.
fall, which you basically co-wrote the first stanza, which was it wouldn't have been nearly as powerful without it. So coming from you, that means a lot, brother. I mean, it's been, and it probably goes back even further. And I think we could probably get into. If I'm a valedictorian in anything, it's idiocy. And there was a moment in there that was the true pre-genesis to our friendship, which was the fall of 2009, which I think people might be interested in uh, pontificating a little bit. But man, miss the heck out of radio, miss the heck out of you. But as Michael Scott would say, my, how the turntables, because now you're the
My, how the
host.
turntables have turned.
Yeah. And
That's
I tell you right now, I'm like the last person that should be the first guest on a bonfire because there have been so many guys that have gotten dirty. You know, you could get Duke Meadows on there, the owner of 12 Fires, who named his
mm-hmm.
entire winery, award winning winery, after Bonfire and did 4 bonfires in 4 years with 3 other guys who also started the winery. I mean, there's
Right.
Jackie Sherrill, who actually climbed up there while being the head coach of the Aggies, and, Fuquay. And they'll all be on here. And so many
Yep.
of them, just amazing, amazing people. And Gamble and Jay Brooks, who stripped and created the fumble that Gamble pounced on, and then he fell to his knees and raised his arms to the sky, like, I can't believe
Yep.
we just did that, but we had to do it. There was not another choice. And all, not just 99, but it goes all the way throughout history. So for me to be the first one, to call it an honor would be a gross understatement. And to see sort of being in this moment right now in early 2022, after I was less than educated about student bonfire about 12, 13 years ago, but have since become not just educated, but a huge fan of over the years. It's quite an honor to be the first guest, my man. I'm glad you're doing this.
Well, I appreciate it. And, when we're done, you can send me your notes on, hey, Dion, here's how you can do better talking to
No,
people.
not at all. You're the man,
But
brother.
yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning some of those folks, because some of those folks, it again reinforcing why I wanted to talk to you first. Some of those folks are already lined up and ready to roll, and I
No,
want to make
absolutely.
sure that when I talk to them, I've got the best instruction I can get. But you're right. There's a lot of people who've come through it, and
Man,
we
no
definitely
doubt.
want their stories to shine.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump into what you mentioned there. I was going to slowly build up to it, but you hit it. So tell us about where you think your bonfire story started.
Oh man, and I probably talked to you about this before, Dion, but I think you have to go back to realizing I was a first generation ag. My dad was in reconnaissance in the Marine Corps. My his dad back in the day, it was all just paper birth certificates, and you literally could just change it with a pen, right? If you did it meticulously enough. And when my grandfather, who survived polio as a child, was just 14 years old, lied on his on his birth certificate, and the year he was born, he put it 4 years back because that's the easiest way he could have made that edit. And so he needed to be 18 or older to go into World War II. And so at 14, he lied on his birth certificate so that he could fight in the war, in the army, and jumped out of airplanes. I mean, he's a war hero. Bill Bock is his name, and all of the men on my dad's side were military except me. So you can imagine what Thanksgivings are like when here comes this puny little, Thank God I'm a fighting Texas Aggie. They love the Aggies, but this radio guy coming in, and these guys are all incredible heroes and West Point grads and all kinds of stuff. But my dad did not go to college, but he served in Vietnam behind enemy lines in the Marine Corps. And so to be a first generation ag, didn't know much about it really. I went on a couple visits, but I was also looking at tech because all my high school friends were going there and I didn't know where I wanted to go. Part of me wanted to go to UTA just so I could skip out of class and go to day ranger games left and right. And so I was a total free agent, had no idea where I wanted to go. And so, but I was kind of ready. I wasn't sure, and I was a little bit late on college applications and everything coming out of high school. So I just decided to go the junior college route, right in my hometown, Grayson County College. But I was kind of ready to do a bridge situation where maybe I don't live at the house, but I stay close to home. And I moved out of the house and decided I was going to live on campus, 7 miles from my house, and live in the campus dorm at the Viking dorm at Grayson County College. In fact, the year prior to me, John Lackey was in that same dorm room. He would go on to be a World Series hero and pitch for the Angels and Red Sox. But anyway, so he was at Grayson County College. A lot of great baseball talent. And my senior year of high school, we won the national championship. And then the very next year, the year I was there in 2000, not fall of '99, spring of 2000. So that spring, they repeated, and that was Tim Tadlock, who's now the great coach at Texas Tech. So anyway, so it's all potluck, and I get stuck with this kid, this guy. He's a year older than me. He's a sophomore. His name's Felix Munson. Well, if you know anything about Denison, the Munsons might as well be the king and queens. That might as well be royalty in Denison. In fact, our
Hmm.
football stadium is named Munson Stadium. And if you're a Munson, you could probably just write your own ticket to be mayor of that town. And there have been many of them on the school boards, on the city council, multiple. Can you hear me now? Can you see me? Okay. So you're just gonna do a you're gonna do a sweet edit.
Yeah, I'll do an edit. I'm not good enough at editing, so it'll probably just be like beep edit.
Where was I?
Mayor Mayor Munson.
Oh, okay. All right. We had a little technical audio stuff here, but we're back. and we're good to go. Can you hear me fine, Dion?
I can hear you well.
Good. That's what's good about an organic podcast. You can just basically say, "Yeah, we cut out for a minute, and then we're just going to keep this in." I think.
Right.
But so
Right.
so the Munsons, right, and is where
Hmm.
we were. But so Felix Munson, which was my buddy now, Felix Munson's dad. Okay,
Hmm.
the older Felix Munson was the only Munson really to move, I believe, to move his family out of Denison. Why would you, right? Would Queen Elizabeth move to Germany? I don't think so.
Right.
But he moved and raised his family in Round Rock, Texas. And some people listening might know them. They're great people. And so Felix Jr., the son, graduated from Round Rock High School, went to Texas A&M, and you know what it's like when you just get here. And he was in a real major. That's hard enough.
Hmm.
And then he was in the Corps of Cadets. That adds a whole nother element to how to manage your schedule. Really, really smart guy. He drove a baby blue Scout International Scout, which is the absolute thing of beauty. This car.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then all of a sudden he decided, because he's a red ass Aggie man. He's like, I'm getting in Bonfire. I mean, why I'm here? I'm a freshman. I'm in the Corps Cadets. Like, this is the experience. So he did Bonfire. This was '98. Okay, so
Hmm.
fall of '98, Felix Munson is in Bonfire, Corps Cadets, a real big time major. And he probably won't mind me saying this, but he had academic issues, just like I did when I had a 1.875 my first semester at A&M. Right? It
Yep.
happens. My last one was like a 3.5, but you got to figure it out, right? And he had to figure it out. Well, he didn't make it that second semester, and he's like, I got to go JUCO, so I could go to like ACC in Austin because we're from Round Rock, moved back home. Or how about I tried Denison? I'm a Munson. We got family lake property. We got all kinds of family property up there. I've never fully gotten to experience it. And so he decides he's going to go to Grayson County College. And I'm potluck. And so I just go into the dorm. And lo and behold, I get paired with Felix Munson, who's a Texas Aggie and a big time diehard Aggie who is desperate to make great grades at Grayson so he can get back to Texas A&M. You hear me fine, Dion?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm
So
making a
so
note to send Felix Munson a thank you note.
Yeah, no, he played a big role in my story, man. I even talk about him in muster speeches and things like that. And Felix should probably be on the podcast because without him, we wouldn't be talking about Bonfire right now. I don't think, not with me. And so here it is. Remember, this is the fall of '99,
Mhm.
and I'm learning and growing in my knowledge of Texas A&M because of Felix. And so here we go. We moved in probably August and September and October. We're growing our friendship, and then November rolls around, and he's talking to his core buddies about Bonfire, and he's getting all fired up. And then November 18th at 2:42 a.m. happens. He wakes up to 100 phone calls. Probably there weren't even texts back then. He wakes up to probably no less than 100 phone calls that people he knew were on that stack, okay,
Mhm.
when it fell. And it was in that moment where I think he basically just hearing his conversations with other Aggies. And I was already just open season, figuring out where I was going to go that next semester and was committed to doing what it took in the application process to get on top of it, that I was going somewhere. It was time to, I love Denison now, but it was time to move on for me.
Mhm.
It was time for me to figure out what was next. And so it was during that, I believe later that day on the 18th of November, if memory serves, which I'm 41 now, so it might not, but Felix dropped everything. Remember, he needed to get back to A&M,
Mhm.
and it was like midterm central right there about that time, and or like those last test before finals, late
Right.
November,
Right.
and he just dropped it all and went and said, I'm just going to show up and see if I can, just however I can help. And it was that motivation, which is a word you use a lot, Dion, and that
Yeah.
determination. And I said, man, would they do that at freaking Tech?
Right.
And I said, if this is what being an Aggie looks like this is a real picture of what being an Aggie looks like, then I want to be a part of it. And so it was really that's where it started, Dion, was sort of a precursor to me even coming to A&M, not having known a ton about Bonfire, except Fox Sports Southwest used to broadcast it, I think, before the games. Right.
Right.
So I saw Bonfire, but I didn't see that's sometimes you say like that is the least important part of Bonfire, actually burning it. Right. And so
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
build and the camaraderie and the motivation and that team attitude and that Aggie spirit that it takes to actually put that sucker up, 50, 60, and then even higher is what Bonfire is all about.
Right.
And so I only saw burn ever growing up and never experienced an on campus bonfire in my entire life. So, but I was motivated at that point to be an Aggie. And I don't know how or why, but never today would I have gotten accepted. It's so much harder now. And I think many of us old Ags are thankful that we came up when we did, you
I
know?
agree with you. I think I would agree with that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so somehow some JUCO Bach got accepted to A&M, and the rest is history. And I moved into Moore Hall, and
More Hall
there wasn't a
truckers.
bonfire.
More
We're
Hall
all truckers,
truckers.
man.
Yeah.
Yep. And then
One
got
of
to
our
see what. Go
one
ahead.
of our next conversations at some point. Jim Bose. You know Jim?
No, I don't. I
Braz's
don't think so.
Wi-Fi.
Oh
He's a
yeah,
More
yeah,
Hall
yeah,
trucker.
yeah. Oh, he's
Yeah.
been helping out a lot with the internet out there, right? The
That's right. He
connectivity.
he does the internet
Yeah.
out there.
Yep.
One of my Grey Pot buddies. He's a Moore guy.
That's great, man. So then I get on campus and get randomly put into Moore, and
Hmm.
remember a lot of those Moore guys, they'll stay around for 3 or 4 years. Because
Oh
they're
yeah.
a lot of those Northsiders, especially old
Yeah.
school, and then they were right across that little courtyard there from Crocker. And who was
Hmm.
the guy? Remind me. We've had him on the show. Oh, Cromwell, right? I'm sorry. No,
Um,
Comstock. Comstock.
Comstock. Yeah. Comstock was
Comstock.
Moses. The
He
other
was
one. Yep.
Moses, right?
Yep.
So Moses
Yep.
was right across the deal, right? And so I
Yep.
remember being out in that courtyard, and this guy in a wheelchair popped. And I'm a freshman, right? Or
Hmm.
first year at A&M, sophomore. Don't know anything from anything or who's who, except all these guys at Moore Hall were all fired up, are still totally bonfire, but extremely disappointed that we couldn't build it. Obviously, I remember there being like a Ray Bowen random city hall just breakout in the middle of that courtyard at some point, where they just asked him questions because all these Northsiders wanted to keep building, and then Comstock showed up randomly one day in a wheelchair, and it was like he was Elvis
Oh
to
yeah.
Northside, and I wanted to
Oh
know
yeah.
more. So those are just some we could go deep, but those are just some early sort of impressions that I had of this is what being an Aggie and having that fighting spirit really looks like personified, and it was personified in is it James Comstock?
Oh, John. John.
John.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
but in John, which we've had on the show,
Hmm.
great dude and an incredible survivor of that '99 collapse. But I got to see that personified and wanted to learn more, and was a little bit disappointed that as a Northsider we couldn't be involved, but understanding the circumstances. So
And
that's
I
just the
wonder.
very, very beginning, you know?
I often wonder if people I meet later, if I had actually crossed paths with them at some other time, maybe when I had more hair and less me, and so would not be recognizable. But I remember. I don't remember Bowen coming to Northside, but he very well may have. I remember
I do.
one of my favorite stories was that 2002 announcement that was made at Rudder, and we went, and there was actually a legitimate idea that they would say yes, and here's the new paradigm that we're going to continue with, and
Hmm.
hearing no, and then just not being rude, not being disrespectful, just every student there getting up and walking out,
Right.
and because there was nothing else, we were wasting our time. If you open with the punchline, and the punchline is we're not doing it anymore, well then you're not doing it, so we are,
Right.
and you just
Hmm.
left. and
Yeah.
going to Northside. And a bunch of people showed up at Walton. There was a huge, all those
Yeah.
people everywhere. And I wonder if, and he very well may have come over at some other point. But all those people showed up at Walton and on that concrete barrier thing in front of the dorm.
Yep.
And so, you would have been right next door, right? And all these people show up and stand up and, what are we doing here? And well, we want to build Bonfire. So, well, what are you doing here? Like
What's
the woods are
next?
way over that
Right.
way. But
Right.
that you've caught and kind of put your finger on something that existed, which was this pervasive. You don't just stop. That motivation comes from somewhere. It can't possibly come from a football game with some stupid quote unquote rival. It comes from someplace else, and you don't just hit the brakes on it. It's gonna keep
Right.
going, and it's going to be something that you, coming from the outside, can feel still being alive, because it's
Yeah.
more than just a burning thing. It's a burning thing in here.
Yeah. So Dion, having never actually experienced a build when I was in college or before that, never actually experienced a burn in person.
Mhm.
When word got out that it was just kind of going to the woods, maybe initially over there by the paintball course or somewhere way out,
Yeah,
it was initially in a different location,
boondocks.
you know,
Yeah.
boondocks. And so the idea was, I think it was met with a little bit of a split, right? In
Oh
terms of,
yeah.
well, that's not real Bonfire. Bonfire is meant to be on campus. And there, somewhere along the way, somebody came up with, this is like a renegade bonfire.
Mhm.
That was a term that was being thrown around. And so years go by, and it's the genesis of you guys trying to build something special. And sometimes that takes a lot of freaking hard work. You know what I mean? Ton of
Yeah.
sweat equity and without a lot of respect. And so I didn't feel like this when it trickled out that there was going to be an off-campus bonfire. I didn't feel like it was met with a huge amount of ceremony positively.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm wrong. Everybody
Oh
has
no, you're
different
right.
perspective.
You're
Yeah, and
so right.
so, and I'm trying to remember back 20 years ago, right? But then here
Yeah.
comes, like, when did it start? 02, 03, somewhere in there?
Yeah. O2 was the Unity Project heap
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
Boondocks. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then slowly built, but here I go getting married. Here I go starting a radio career. Here I go not really thinking a minute about off-campus bonfire, except the first 12 hours of when the announcement was that they're still going to build on the
Hmm.
boondocks, right? That
Right.
was my only perspective of off-campus bonfire, was somewhere around fall of '02 in oceanography class, reading in the bat that off-campus bonfire was going out east or whatever it
Right.
was, and
Right.
then hearing a couple people around me negatively react to that, Dion,
Right.
right? You guys are working your asses off for 6 years, and then I'm the meathead that gets on the radio in Houston in the fall of '09, and one of the hosts asked me about Bonfire, and I just say, "Wow, I mean, Bonfire left in '99 with the fall." And I say, and now they build a stack and burn it, but it's just like a renegade party fest, right? Do you remember that, Dion? And
I
I
I
got obliterated.
I
I mean,
remember you
I got
brought that up.
obliterated.
You brought that up a couple years ago, and that was one of the
It
most
was the
interesting things about your story. I had completely forgotten. You mentioned it. I went, oh my gosh, no, I guess I do remember that because of everything you've done since. I there's certain things I forget, but yeah, I do remember after you mentioned it.
well, that was the worst day of my entire media career. That was the day I thought I was going to get fired from Texags. I actually was only a year in
Mm.
at Texags. So it could have been really easy to say, look, at this point, you've been canceled before that was really a part of the culture.
Right, 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 right.
Pre Twitter, you're out. Aggies are done. I mean, I got smoked on Texags, and I literally called the radio station back, and I felt so bad about it. And I read every single post, every single word, in response to that comment that I made on Houston radio that was posted on TexAgs. 100% negative comments about my thoughts of off-campus bonfire. And so I was heartbroken, really, because I realized that I made a significant mistake, and I realized that I needed to go out and check it out for myself to see what it actually was, and to get a better view of what off-campus student bonfire looks like currently. This was the fall of 2009. And so went on and I called Houston radio, the producer, and I said, I need to get on the air. And they let me right on the air. It was really weird, right? I mean, awkward. This was a totally different show.
Right.
4 hours later.
Right.
And some dude's calling, and I'm like apologizing to the Aggie fans on Houston radio on 790.
Yeah.
Because I messed up big time. I was probably darn near crying, holding back tears. I remember standing outside at Parker Avenue at the TexAg's second location, I guess. Well, the first was at Brandon's. Well, there'd been a lot of locations, but the second official office building that we had in North Bryan, and making that call to Houston radio, and really not knowing if that was going to help or not. But I needed whoever was listening to know that I was wrong and I'm sorry. And so somebody from Bonfire, Dion, reached out to me in an email. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking it had to be you, but I don't know who it was. Maybe it was a Red Pot. I don't know. But somebody was kind enough within Student Bonfire, and I don't know the name, honestly. And they said, listen, we heard what you said on Houston radio. We've seen all the reaction. We heard your apology. We forgive you. And I got on TexAgs, apologized with effusive apology. And they said, we want to invite you. There's going to be tickets, many as you want, at the gate. And we want you to come experience it for yourself. And nobody needs to know you're there, nothing like that. But if you want to just come, you can come. And I decided I was going to come by myself, so that I could drive out there. Who knows if somebody mad at me was going to see or not, but I was going to come. I was basically going to park where I could park, walk up to it, and experience all of it for myself. But solo, so I could take it all in and really think.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I drove to Bonfire. It's where the current location, right? That was
right.
Yep. Drove up there, got in, parked my truck, walked up. I think Frank Cox was a speaker, if I'm not mistaken.
In 2009, yeah, that would have been Frank.
Would have been Frank, yep. And remember, an outstanding speech from a former Yale leader, Frank Cox, who's an author and just a great Aggie, right?
Yeah,
and watch that thing burn.
I don't think they called him at that then, but that was back at a time where the Yale leaders ran Bonfire, so he's at least the equivalent of a Red Pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and he had a whole lot to say about it. Yeah.
Oh, he's so
experienced good. That. Yeah, that was in '67, probably fall of 66,
65,
65. Okay.
And I'll get all the details when Frank is on. We're gonna.
Good.
Do one. Yeah.
Friend of the fire, man. So I watched it until it probably the last coal was, the ashes were out, and then drove home. Changed in terms of my mind has been changed in terms of what this is and the spirit of. And at that point was just, I didn't think I'd ever kind of have any sort of involvement in Bonfire, but I knew that I would attend and would now gain a new appreciation. And so would my children, and we would just be a fan of Student Bonfire and what they're building. And at that point, it was kind of like still maybe thinking that one day it would get on campus, but I think over time you sort of change your mind and realize it's pretty darn perfect the way it is right now.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. And then you and I have gotten to become friends thanks to Bo Holder, who worked on Bonfire, and I think he introduced us officially. And I met you outside of Olsen Field one day, and you shook my hand. Yep, absolutely. Yep. I met you outside of Olsen Field one day, and you mentioned you were Dion McInnes and Bo's buddy. And at that point, we become friends. It's probably 10 years ago or longer than that. And then we did a lot of shows together, and you just have over time taken me in and educated me about this incredible Aggie tradition, and can't thank you enough for it, man.
Well, and there's a couple things there. First, I
There's a lot
admit,
there.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot. But that sounds like something I would do. You know, that email that you got, that definitely
Yeah.
sounds like something I would do, but it wasn't.
Memory is, yeah.
It definitely wasn't me because in '09,
Hmm.
I was still a dead. You know, my last fire was '04. Me and my buddies were, the gray pots for '03 and '04, us in '03, and then in '04 we had juniors, and you start that junior senior cycle. All of which to say,
Hmm.
I was done in '04. I took a
Gotcha.
year
Okay.
just barely going out a little bit just to see the things, and you can't completely go away. uh,
Right.
you answer questions whatever as a dead. But by '09, I still was on the outside. It wasn't until after the '09 season, I believe, that they asked
Hmm.
me to be on the board. And then it even took a couple years after that. I told them, if you want me on the board, just be prepared. I'm going to be a complete pain in the juniors,
Hmm.
life. Just because I can't
Yeah.
just be on a board and just here's my name. I gotta be in it. I gotta know what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
But I wasn't at that point yet. So that means I always try to facilitate what the students want to do.
Hmm.
And to make it easier for them, if they want to do something, tell me what you want to do, and then I will
Right.
help you do it, or I will take care of making sure people know that this is what you're doing so that you can do it and not spend your time making
Right.
sure people know that there's an opportunity. So the
Hmm.
handing out the firewood thing,
Right.
last fall, handing out, or last winter, the freeze apocalypse or whatever, their
Yeah.
idea, and then y'all take care of it, and I'll make sure radio, TV, all that stuff knows. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
all of which to say, it's really heartening to hear that you got that email, because it speaks to the fact that these things that I sometimes end up doing. It goes long before the students have always had this motivation to say, you know what, again, that word motivation. Are you motivated? Then, come
Yeah.
on. And,
Right.
you know, you did make this transformation that was informed, and you've always been receptive to the perspectives, attuned to what's going on. I mean, heck, you remembered what people were saying, and you stored that as somebody who studies what's going on to be able to reflect it to everybody,
Hmm.
and you learned something, right?
Yeah. Right.
And not to be cold blooded. I don't mean to be glib or cold blooded, but the way you test if the water's getting hot is you stick your finger in it, and it doesn't feel good.
Exactly.
you know,
No, it doesn't. That must be
it
hot.
right.
Yeah.
It burns a little bit, and if it
Yeah.
hurts,
Yeah.
then you know you're making progress. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you had to be the finger that got stuck in the hot water,
Yeah.
because that's a huge change from what we were experiencing, which was Renegade came from somewhere. Somebody called it Renegade, and it stuck.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, there were students got letters on their doors in the dorm rooms that said Bonfire is not a tradition. Join any other thing, which
Hmm.
doesn't just disrespect what we're doing, it disrespects the entire history. Like, do you really
Yeah.
think that because it's off campus, it doesn't matter anymore? So what did it mean
Right.
to everybody before? And for that to change, for you to go out there and
Yes.
do that, I mean, you stuck your finger in the water, and everybody went, "Nope, we're boiling."
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then I had to figure out, okay, how do I dip my toe in this time and learn and find some safe water? And honestly, I wouldn't have changed it, Dion, because maybe I would still have the same perspective, and maybe
Mhm.
in 2011 when I got the opportunity to host TexAgs Radio, and for 10 years I would have not had you guys on.
Yeah.
And maybe had I not done that in '09, I wouldn't have become a friend of Bonfire, and I wouldn't be friends with you, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to have my mind changed about this great tradition and spirit. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Bonfire on campus was an unbelievably amazing thing, and you were
Mhm.
part of that. But there was so much ceremony to it because it was so amazing, right? But it was such a big deal that maybe a lot of the outsiders who just knew, who maybe fans of A&M, loved Aggie football, but had never built, just associated it with Texas, or just
Right.
associate. I remember other jokes like around 2010, or let's say probably 2012 and 13, maybe. It was, oh, they're building that fire because of their burning desire to beat Missouri.
Yeah.
Remember
Yeah.
that one?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, that's not why we're building the freaking fire. But I knew at that point that that's not why you did it, and we're able to, in an educated way, counter that on air as an opinion maker with the Aggie community. So I wouldn't have traded the worst day of my career, personally, the
Mhm.
worst work day that I've ever had, ever in job, for anything, because it gave me perspective, and it allowed me to be a better Aggie, and
Mhm.
give me a better awareness and understanding. Going from a non-believer to a believer can be a pretty powerful thing. If you
Yeah.
don't know, just read Acts and read about Saul who turns into
Right.
Paul.
Right.
Right? I
Right.
mean, there's many of those,
Yeah.
and so the power of the once non-believer can be a very powerful thing in growing new believers. And so hopefully, Dion, by having you guys on, and the Red Pots and Jackie Sherrill and Fuquay and Comstock and two survivors of the fall. Remember, we had them on. They were going to be on
Mhm.
the big Nightline 48 hours or whatever the heck it was. They did that big thing about it, all that media, and then
Yeah.
helping you get connected with ESPN and doing
Yeah.
those blowout pieces, and all that kind of stuff helped educate new believers into what Bonfire used to be and the greatness of what it currently still is.
Yeah.
And so, but I definitely owe a lot to you for that education. And I believe wholeheartedly, you wouldn't say it, but you're one of the keys to the reason why the perspective of the Aggie currently is to where Jim Schlossnagle could drive his own truck out there and just want to go
Yeah.
to Bonfire. Right?
Yeah.
Like Bonfire has changed immensely in 10 to 15 years, and your efforts have and need to be, you should be in some sort of Bonfire Hall of Fame, because your efforts to educate people have allowed it to go back to being kind of mainstream among Aggie fans in terms of, yeah, Bonfire is awesome. Let's all go. And it used to not be that way. And when I
Yeah.
got on the radio and made a fool of myself, it wasn't that way, and it is now.
Well, and there's 2 points there. Uh, I want to correct, or at least, and I think you probably know. In order, first, you mentioned the on-campus bonfire, and I was probably a part of that. And I know we've talked about it, but just so that everybody's clear, and I think it aligns with your experience, this experience of almost like penance, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to come to A&M the freshman fall semester of '99. And we had moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. We'd been there we moved there in June, 2 years before I was supposed to come to A&M. And I didn't know, after having spent my entire life in Texas, wanting to go to A&M, that the marker to become an out-of-state student is 2 years. So in the
Mm.
summer before coming to A&M, I found out I was an out-of-state student. And that basically
Oh,
adds a
wow.
zero. Yeah. Yeah. That
Oh,
basically adds a
yeah, you better
zero to
believe it.
coming here. And
Yes.
I wasn't prepared, because I just kind of assumed, you just, if you want something, you get it. That was always, I wanted A's, I got them. It was, I never paid
Yeah.
attention. And
Yeah, you want some good old Hatch green chili? You don't have to go far in Albuquerque.
that's right. That's right. That's one of the things I miss about there. I mean, they hate Texas. Let me tell you, they freaking
Oh yeah,
hate it.
yeah,
But I painted my
yeah.
car maroon, put a Texas flag on the antenna, and a "Don't mess with Texas" sticker on
Nice.
it, and I was never able to change lanes in Albuquerque. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
but I had buddies that were like brothers to me when I met them at St. Pius High School in Albuquerque, and only later, after we became fast friends, like we'd been friends forever, did I find out they were coming to A&M. And
oh
so
wow.
they were here when it fell, and by the grace of God, both of them had, in the morning been scheduled to be there, and then for whatever various reasons they weren't there when it fell. And I get the phone calls, and in my mind I'm connecting with these two friends, and this connection with these two buddies that I'm not there for, that I don't know if they're okay or not because I'm not there.
Yeah.
That turns into an awareness because I was keeping up with them. You can't prepare for being an Aggie. You experienced that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You think and the more you think the more off guard you are when you don't. And
Right.
and it was this feeling of, oh my God, I messed up. I took things for granted. I slacked off. I just thought I was just going to get to just show up at A&M. I made a huge mistake. I turned it down. I made excuses. I'll do better and I'll be back next fall or whatever. And I watched all this disappear, and my thoughts were to my buddies and to the people who should have been my buddies that I wasn't there for. And ever since then, it's this internalized, I got to make up for it. I've got to, but it took many years for me to get to where you got, where I realized, what, I'm always going to have that regret. Dang it, I can't believe I did that, and really feel awful about it. But from being so close to getting into the community on Northside and Walton that I got into, and being around people who still had those wounds and in these communities, and knowing that I was coming A&M to build Bonfire, maybe get a degree, sure, but build Bonfire, and to be around and see how important that was. If I had been here, I might have been like so many others who was just so completely gassed, so completely emotionally and physically just gassed, that there were so many that said, this is important and we can't lose it, but I can't do it. And
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and so
They
to
had
be
nothing
on that
left in
line,
the tank, but you had a full tank
yeah,
and
yeah,
motivation. Yeah.
and then that also that I got to make up for it. And the more you do, the more you realize I wouldn't be able to do this if I had. And so it just becomes this self-perpetuating. So, but it, that's a clarification that actually ends up aligning with your thing. And
Yeah. You told me that before, Dion, and I had forgotten, but I'm really glad I missed it because in the first episode, you should probably have laid that out and you got an opportunity to do that for the listeners.
yeah,
That's great. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of Red Pots that don't know. Well, maybe not them, but I bet there are a lot of people who built Bonfire that don't know all of your background. They just
yeah,
thought, hey, good old Dion, Bonfire guy.
yeah, yeah. And it comes up every now and then. And it's getting so distant that it becomes, the lines sort of begin to blur, as to, and for me, I'm always going to be miles behind. But to your other point, an interesting anecdote, I met a surfer in LA, and I was trying to get out of LA as quickly as possible. And so was he.
Come on.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And I talked to this old man next to me at the airport, and he was one of a separate story, probably a whole nother episode. And then he left, and I turned, and this old man said, "Hey, you're the first person in 20 years that's ever talked to me." And like, that's just the way they live. And he lived next door to a movie producer, and nobody ever talked. So I turned and I started talking to this guy next to me. He's a surfer. Turns out he's there. They're making a movie about him. And so we start connecting, me obviously on a much smaller scale, but just about somebody had written, there was the ESPN article and my name's in it or whatever. And it was sort of this discomfort, this mutual discomfort with people wanting to say something about something that you're passionate about and you don't even think about. And as we get to talking and connecting on that, he says, listen, like people tell me, hey, great ride, great wave. They say, yeah, great wave. And he says, but I had nothing to do with the wave, right? I couldn't
Right.
have done what I did
Yeah.
without the wave, but I had nothing to do with it. I was just
Yeah.
where I happened to be when the wave happened to get there. And all I
Mm,
did was stand up. The wave was happening. I just stood up and I
incredible.
didn't fall down. I was like, that's it.
Wow.
That's Bonfire.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that kind of, it's like when the U.S. hockey team beat Russia, the wave had to happen, and all Al Michaels needed to do was talk.
Yeah,
Do you believe in
exactly.
miracles? Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And there have been so many of those calls in my world of that reminds me a lot of play by play. The plays have to happen. You
Yeah.
just got to sit there and call them.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing, man. Mm,
Well, and
that's
to
powerful.
that, let's obviously I can read it here even over video across a city and a half. There's a kind of a glint in your eye, just this spark and this enthusiasm for the art of sport and talking about it. So you have have stepped away from that a little bit with
Right.
Texags.
Hmm.
For a while there, your voice was, "Hey, is this the next Dave South voice?" Right? I mean, those conversations happened, right? Gabe is underpinning or at least following up so many great things in sports, and you're not doing it. So what are you doing now?
Well, so December of 2019, pre COVID, I was really worn out from that year. And I guess it was at Clemson, at Georgia, at LSU, Bama. It was the hardest schedule I've ever seen. I think what did we go 7-5 that year, but it was ridiculous. Played three number ones and I think a number two in there, and it was just I don't know what it was about that year, but I was just kind of beat up, and I didn't just the football seasons are crazy, 7 days a week, many hours every single day, and it just is a grind. And the older your kids get, and then the more successful my wife gets, we start sort of pulling in different directions work wise. And so she's crazy busy over here handling these clients, trying to start a team as a solo agent within a brokerage, but kind of got this idea of let's build a Megan Bock team within the brokerage. Uh, so a lot of work that needed to be done over here, really without my help at all, because I was over here doing this real estate. I mean, the radio stuff and Texags, and didn't have time to think about much of anything. And really, a massive percentage of my available waking hours were spent doing only one thing. And that one thing was all things Texags. Keep the train rolling, keep the content pipeline, flowing like crazy. But you can't just, in order to do that really well, you can't just fake it or go, half hearted. You had to go all in. And I did that from the time I got my first media job at KBTX in 2003 all the way through when I left June 11th of 2021 full time. And so, but it was December 19th, and I was just really tired. And we were driving up to Denison to do Christmas with my family before Christmas, about a week and maybe 10 days before Christmas. Maybe like, I want to say it was probably December 19th or something like that, because the kids would have had to gotten out of school. So it was after that. And then it was that little interim where we'd go up there and then we'd come back for Christmas. And I remember just really being tired, thinking, is this what my next 30 years look like? Right. And is it 50 years? Is it 30? Is it 10? Is it one? And I was asking those questions. What would it look like if it was 50? What would it look like if it were 30 or 10 or one? And one really kind of was like, that's not a possibility. But maybe 10 is, maybe not. And my whole idea was let's do 10,000 shows. I did two, so why couldn't we get to 10? 2,300, maybe 24, 29, I think is what we got to, maybe. But it was, I drove and I saw a sign for, I think, Champion School of Real Estate where Megan took a couple of tests and did some training. And I looked and I told Megan, what if I did that? What if I became a realtor? We did this together. And I remember she doesn't cuss very much, but I would, maybe there's a PG cuss word, but she said, hell no.
Whoa.
And she said, yeah, I know. I was like, whoa, hey, now let's not get crazy. And I said, why not? And she said, well, that would be too much of our eggs in one basket. What if it just doesn't work and it's all commission? And really, this is your dream job and passion. So let's not get crazy here. And then COVID comes around, and we're in a 5-month total sports shutdown. But the paper can get smaller based on how many ads they're selling. That's why the Sunday paper is bigger. You can tweet less. You can actually literally write, just decide you're not writing this week in an internet site. But on radio, you can't do that. When the lights come on at 8:05, you have to talk. If you have a whole bunch of content to talk about or you have nothing, you have to fill the time. And that's a good thing about it, is we have to have real conversations. And that is leaving our society. But on radio, it will always be the only thing that we have are our words and our ability to talk to each other and listen. That is the beauty of this medium. But it's also the beast when there's nothing to talk about. So we had as much fun as we could possibly have, but I asked if we could move to 2 hours. And the answer was no. We had the spots to fill. We still had sponsors, and I totally got that. But that beat me down pretty good, and it became more of a grind than a more of a job for the first time ever, probably. And so during that, doing a 3-hour talk show every single weekday for 5.5 months with absolutely nothing to talk about, after I'd already been thinking about what might be next and really praying about that, it became kind of evident that we should really start pursuing what is next and when that would happen. And I kept coming back to just talking myself out of it. Well, what if I only did the show and cut everything else? And what if I blah blah blah? Even January of 21, we were going on a road trip to Florida, and I was still trying to talk myself out of it. And Megan had fully come around at this point that this would be a great idea, and I'd be an asset to her team that was really kicking it off and rolling. And that's when she really said that still wouldn't afford you what we need most, which is you to be home more. And you would still be up at 4 a.m. You'd still be crazy tired. We still wouldn't have necessarily evenings because you would always be thinking about getting up at 4 the next morning. And we still, it would still be crazy. Maybe there's another route there where you still are involved at TexAgs, but it's not the show. So that became the focus of my thoughts and prayers and our conversations. And then it was, I want to say about the 15th of January, I was just really thinking and praying about the window to talk to Billy when my mind was made up, that I needed to talk to Billy first. And at that point, only about 6 people knew that I was getting ready to leave. So I had a socially distanced conversation with Lucci. He wouldn't let me in his house.
Yeah.
So he was cooking, and I asked if I could come over, and I came over, and I was in the garage. I wasn't beyond the threshold, and we had about a 9-foot away conversation for 2.5 hours, where I told him that I was crying like crazy, man. I let it all out because I felt like I was holding something in. I had a secret that I needed to share with him most. And honestly, that was Billy's finest hour as a manager, as a TexAgs boss. Really, I mean, he was incredible about it. And I owed them 2.5 years left of my contract. I mean, I could have paid a buyout or whatever, but they were just really good about understanding the language. The reason why we put that language in was so somebody didn't come get me and I leave for another media job, not leave the industry and still be involved in helping out TexAgs, but to go work for my wife. And in this whole this situation of bringing home every single day our most exhausted selves, that schedule was untenable and needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and that was the key and the crux to it. And so I finally let the world know, I think the Monday after the NFL draft, which was probably May 3rd of 21, let the Aggies know. And then I had about 6 weeks. And then June 11th was my last show. And at that point, I still had to finish up my tests and my classes. So I left my dream job to get into this real estate thing with Megan, not knowing if I would actually even like the work.
Mhm.
I had been around it enough to know I might like it, but I was fine with that because it afforded us what we really needed, which was more time together as the kids are getting more and more busy and involved in all these activities. The prime for a sports radio host is 51 years old. Well, I've got 10 years left with my kids, and they'll all be out, and I'll be 51. And then most of your listeners are younger than you. You've got more perspective than ever before. There's instant respect because you're older than your listeners primarily versus being in my 20s and trying to start this from scratch. So I could
Mhm.
always go back to it, but I highly doubt I will because full time at least, I like dabbling in it, making it a hobby again. It's been really fun to just kind of do it for fun now, be sort of a consultant and content creator with TexAgs on the side, which has made it really, really fun, which is the way it started out
Right.
and the way it was for so many years. Just incredibly fun. But I doubt I'll go back full time because this has just been incredible. I'm shocked that I love it as much as I do, Dion. And so working with Megan, with the Megan Bock team, selling residential real estate, Bryan College Station, we've been growing like crazy. Megan sold 100 houses last year, and I'd like to believe we could double that this year if we get lucky. But we got a bunch of Roy May joined us.
Hmm.
He joined our
Yep.
team. Yeah, Good Bull Barbecue, the oldest yell eater ever, and we got a heck of a group. We're continuing to kind of grow that, and we'll see where the good Lord takes us, man. But could not be happier. So it's kind of like stepping into this situation, not knowing if I would love it, and then so thankful that the decision has been honored by God and that I have grown a sports like passion and exuberance for real estate.
Yeah.
And really, really happy for where we are and excited for where we're headed.
Well, and Gabe, it doesn't surprise me that you love it and you're clearly, following it, and you wear your enthusiasms very clearly. Nobody's surprised to hear what you enjoy because you make sure you wear it. You're very clear about the things that motivate you. Your family, right? I remember
Right.
when there was the pictured so clearly in my mind. I tried to find a photo of it for you for today, and then I realized I didn't take the photo. I just observed it so clearly that it's burned into my head like in a photograph. When you brought your daughter to the drive at West where they were loading all of the 18-wheeler trucks. Remember, Aggie Land Outfitters had said, hey, bring some stuff. And so many people brought
Yeah.
stuff, they had to bring 18-wheelers. The
Yeah.
Bonfire kids showed up before the 18-wheelers were there because
Yep.
I called Foddy and I was like, hey, I think you're going to end up surprised. And
Yeah.
he said, what do we do? And then here comes all of Bonfire to help load the trucks. But so I'm there just kind of watching them.
Yeah.
And then you showed up and with your daughter sharing this enthusiasm that you have for the community and for doing good things. And I remember your daughter, she gave a stuffed animal.
She did. Yeah.
Was it a bear?
Like a pink stuffed animal, like a bear or an elephant or something. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that.
And I
Yeah.
remember
It was at the
it
mall, I
wasn't.
think, in the parking lot.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
remember it wasn't an easy thing for her. It wasn't like, oh, here's the stuffed animal. I've got lots of them. She
All right.
she did like her daddy does. She wore her emotions out and she said, here's how I feel about this. Like she was sad, but she knew it was the right thing to do. And here
Yeah.
you bringing your family into your world, and now you're bringing your world into your family. So there's one aspect. And I've worked with Megan. The house I'm in right now,
Yep.
Megan got us this house. And the
Yeah.
experience of shopping for a house, having been on the corner of Church and Boyette, the closest front door to the Dixie Chicken, like for 10 years, we love that
Yeah.
place, but we outgrew it. And part of my hesitation to buy was I don't want to have to like go through the process of buying a house. Wake me up when I'm in a house. And
Yeah. Absolutely.
Megan, her ability to listen and just listen to what we wanted, and not just what we wanted, but why we wanted it. We had the perfect Goldilocks experience. Here's one extreme of what you say you want. Here's the other extreme. Third one, we walked in, we went, this is it. And that was it. It took like 3 houses, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks or something.
Yeah.
So it's about listening. Great. And it's what you do.
Yeah.
It's listening and family. So I'm happy for you. I'm very happy for you. This is your wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Dion. I mean, it's been great. And I don't think without Bonfire, I'd be as close to Jackie Sherrill as I am. There's just been so many friendships that have been formed through this. And just remember helping get Gamble there. And we did that broadcast there. That was magical, man. When we did the full broadcast that time, that was really hard to pull off, especially out there in the woods. But that hour long, was it 2 hours or 1 hour? I mean, it was long. It was like a whole pregame show.
It was a while.
Like
like
Super Bowl pregame show.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to get to that here. I think this is going to end up being, this is almost a separate thing. We found so many other outstanding things to talk about, but that was definitely, like, you almost got to come back on to talk about that. That was from the extreme of 2014, pointing a camera, one single camera with an ambient microphone at Stack.
Which got 1 million hits on Facebook, I think.
Oh, millions, I believe.
Yeah,
it was
around the world.
People loved it.
Yeah.
And I saw the comments where people were saying, my favorite part was listening to a parent explaining to a child what it was that they were watching. They were up on top of Bus 12, the great Roger Lane family contribution to Texas A&M. This Bus 12, Texags on top. And so there were families up there, and somebody was whispering, explaining what was happening, and unintentionally educating everybody about, okay, this is their walking laps now, and then and to go from that, just kind of fly on the wall to the broadcast, which I think was necessary and good, and really just like this huge influx of information, surprising perspectives. Jim McTasney saying that he was wrong about it being off campus. It should be, and this is right.
Yes.
Coach Sherrill. I learned a lot from Jim about how to be a husband that night. I don't know if you remember, his wife made a quilt. And she came up to me before we started. She says, hey, I want to give this to Jim before we, sometime while he's on stage, I want to give it to him live. And she had made that. Yeah, she made that quilt with Rick Perry's wife. They had worked on it together to give Jim this quilt. It had his coveralls cut out, the Aggie Bonfire of his coveralls. And I mentioned it to your producer at the time. I want to do this. And she was like, no, we don't have time. We can't. No, it's. and so I was like, okay, duly noted. But this is totally going to happen. And so we cut away, and then Lisa comes up the stairs, and she's got the bundle, and I was, give it. And your producer's going, "Don't, what are you doing?" And then we come back, and I've got the bundle, and I hand it to Jim, and I go, here, Jim. And Jim takes it, and he saw the exchange with me and Lisa. And so he looks at it having no idea what to do. And so he starts with going, Dion,
we're on
we
live
wanted
at this point,
to.
Right?
What's that?
We're on live
live.
At this point. Yeah.
Fully live. Yeah. And he starts to say, like, Dion, we wanted to. And I was like, no. That's for you. That's like, yes. I remember going, that's being a husband, just like, okay, yes, honey, I got it. I'll do this. Yes. And but that was fun. That was awesome. That was a whole thing.
Yeah, it was cool. A lot of perspectives there, man. That was great.
But I definitely, want to have you on. I think we could, like I said, we could almost do a whole episode on what that was like. Certainly there were curveballs that were thrown, and there were really great people who helped navigate those challenges. There's no challenges, only opportunities, as we say. So many great things. And I know you've got to run. You've got listings to do. You've got a podcast also with the inimitable President Lofton.
That's right. Absolutely.
What is that?
Yeah, we do.
Follow the Money
College sports,
podcast.
follow the money. Yep. On the business of college sports. That really keeps me active, man, because you got to keep up with the pulse. And every single time we record, there's a ton of brand new information. So it's been really, really fun. But nah, no question. Hey, real quick, I would also say that the growth of the awareness of Student Bonfire would not be where it was without that stream, because then millions of people are then
Absolutely.
re-exposed to what Bonfire is, and then that stream would not happen without TexAg's president and CEO Brandon Jones believing in Student Bonfire, listening to you and you guys and your, I wouldn't say plight, but more effort,
Mhm.
and the intense striving to share this magical experience with other people, even that can't make it in person. And so,
Yeah.
but without, Brandon could have just said, it's out in the freaking country. There's barely internet. How are we going to stream this thing for hours? All it's going to do is make us look bad when we can't stream it.
Right.
Well, why can't you stream it? We're all fired up for it. And so, but he said, no, we're going to cut through the forest. We're going to roll through the wilderness, and we're going to figure out how to get this done. And from
Yeah.
14 on, and other people then saw that it's cool and then wanted to get in on it. And you guys have remained loyal to TexAgs. And I believe we've done it every single year since 2014. So without Brandon, I would just wanted to give a little tip of the cap to Brandon, a little head nod, because I think he was a huge part of kind of coming alongside, listening to some of the content we were producing on Bonfire on the show,
Mhm.
realizing there's something special going on campus. And TexAgs is in the business of being involved with special things on the A&M campus. And
Yeah.
so he jumped on board, and I think that is history and has done a lot. Brandon's um, willingness as a partner, I think, to be a partner of Bonfire, has done a lot to help expose new audiences that didn't get to experience it.
Mhm.
Every student on campus now was not even born when Bonfire collapsed,
Right.
pretty much, for the most part. Maybe some medical students or something, but for the most
Unless there's
part,
a
none of
Roy
them
May in the
remember it,
bunch. Yeah.
other than a Roy May out there, yeah, someplace.
Yeah.
But that's few and far between. And so we're exposing new audiences and then reminding the old Ags of what's truly special about it. So, tip of the cap to Brandon, tip of the cap to you. I'm just glad to kind of be alongside and be a fan here. Like, I'm a fan of the Aggie sports events and go and get to call us we for the first time in 25 years.
Yeah.
I can just go
Yeah.
be a fan of you guys and Bonfire these days.
Yeah. And really, I mean, it cannot be emphasized enough just how important the live stream has been to awareness, but also to, the COVID shutdown, the protocols that said people can't be in this space, and
Mm-hmm.
when people are still trying to figure out how we deal with this thing, to face the prospect of, all right, everybody, leadership having to tell the students, you're building this, and we're pretty sure nobody's going to be able to show up. That becomes a harder ask unless you have something like TexAgs that says we will make sure to share this experience with everybody. Your work won't just be for yourself.
Yes.
And that commitment to just figure it out every year. And honestly, this last year was the first year ever in all of the broadcasts that they actually pulled the trailer into the place that it was supposed to be more than 24 hours before it had to be there. Like, Brandon's patience to show up every year and go, you haven't moved the trailer yet? And this was the first year to finally do it. He loves it. He's finding a way to make it work every year. I appreciate it so much.
Mm-hmm. No doubt, my
Yeah.
man. Well, I can't tell you how much it means that I thought I'd be maybe the 100th guest or something like that, but to be the first one means a lot, man. I appreciate your invitation,
Well,
and I
send
miss
me your
all the
notes
Aggies out there,
afterwards.
man. It's fun talking. No, you did great. I knew you would, man. I mean, you are one of the most talented guys. I remember sending you some chicken scratch about the my effort to present an accurate sort of depiction of what 99 felt like. And you've already told your story that while you weren't there, you know a bunch about it and talked to many people just like I have. But when you come back with me with something very similar to this, and I chose your version way more than mine, and maybe pieced it together, and it in the early morning of November 18th, 1999, in College Station, Texas, a year of careful planning, intense work, and incredible motivation were drawing to a close in two opposite corners of the Texas A&M campus. As the football season was ending in one corner, Aggie Bonfire, already climbing 59 feet and 5,000 logs, was nearly complete, ready to serve as the football season's crescendo before the final game of the season against the University of Texas. At 2:42 a.m., with dozens of Aggie students in its heights and around its base, Bonfire came crashing to the ground. 12 Aggies lost their lives. 27 more were injured. What took place in the hours and days following the tragedy exactly 20 years ago are well documented, but this story has never been told exclusively through the eyes and voices and memories of the Texas A&M football team. In the aftermath of the Bonfire collapse, football suddenly did not feel nearly as important as it did prior to the fall, but it proved to be vital to the healing process of an entire community. The campus bookended by these two champions of the spirit of Aggieland was shrouded in tragedy. Bonfire had begun in the early hours of November 18th, 1907, as a celebration and welcome home after an Aggie football victory. Since that time, it preserved a spirit of service to all of Aggieland and Aggie football, and on the exact date, perhaps even the hour of its inception, it's emotional, man. The Aggie football team felt the call to serve Bonfire. The 1999 Texas A&M team's response will never be forgotten. First at Stack Site, when the team helped remove logs and debris as part of rescue and recovery efforts, and 8 days later inside Kyle Field in a miraculous come-from-behind 20-16 win over number 7 Texas. The first glimmer of hope for healing came the moment that defensive back Jay Brooks stripped Longhorns quarterback Major Applewhite and freshman linebacker Brian Gamble pounced on the football in the closing moments of the game. The spirit of every Aggie present was watching, and watching was seen in the person of Gamble falling to his knees, arms open, eyes turning to the sky, crying, "We did it. We did it." Over the years, we've spoken to dozens of players and coaches about the events of that week and the impact that moment continues to have on their lives. And then we go on and tell the story from the very first moment that RC at his house hears about Bonfire collapsing, all the way through sort of a epilogue of how much they still think about that moment in their lives. At that point, 20 years later, we put this out in 2019, Dion, and I asked your help. And that's sort of what it felt like. The rest was just pulling quotes. But you made it great, and I couldn't thank you enough for that, man.
Yeah, that was an incredible piece y'all wrote. I'm glad you mentioned it. We gotta have a link to that.
Yeah.
An incredible series of perspectives, reflecting. Every Aggie's got something in them that motivated them to come here, and people choose different paths with what they do when they come here. But the only common expectation among everybody is do something great, and sometimes we can help each other in our different pursuits. We can come together and we could do something great in the same space. And when we're not in the same space, we just have to trust that everybody is where they need to be, doing exactly what they need to be doing.
Absolutely.
And for so many years and still today, you're definitely one of those that is in your space, finding ways to do things that matter to Aggies all over, to set a good example of being motivated, sharing, being proud, and working hard, embracing family, finding a way to remember the people that matter, even when life's getting busy and there's things like goals and ambitions to check and make sure that everybody's being taken care of. In all these ways, I appreciate everything that you've done for Aggieland, and all the best to everything you got going on. I know we're going to be seeing, continuing to see a fair bit of each other. I know we got to follow up and do do more follow up on some of those, the experience of the live stream. That's a whole nother story. That's a
Yeah.
beast unto its own.
Yeah, it is.
And so thank you for everything, Gabe,
Yeah,
and thank you for your time this morning.
absolutely.
I appreciate it.
No, it's been my pleasure, Dion. Gig 'em Aggies, and miss talking to everybody and hearing everybody's voices and hearing all their calls and texts on the radio. But absolutely doing incredibly well. So happy. Life is really, really good right now. So I'm very thankful. Really, really am. And thankful for the opportunity, Dion. Giga man.
Outstanding. And hey, last thing, at Gabe Bock on the Twitter.
Yeah, I don't love Twitter, but you got to use it, I'm
You
still
got good
on it.
stuff there.
I know.
So keep
I
up with
know.
Gabe. I know you got links to the
Yeah.
podcast. Check that stuff
Yeah.
out. Lots of great stuff
Follow
still
the
happening
money,
there.
man. Follow the money. I want everybody to check that out. Share with their friends. It's a fun, unique perspective. Nobody's doing it. We don't talk about the tight end battle, right? We talk about
Yeah.
what's going on with the money side and the business and NIL and college football playoff and the NCAA's fall from grace and what's going to happen there, and what the new world order would look like with maybe Sankey at the controls kind of deal. And
Mm-hmm.
he's been tasked to do that, basically create a new constitution for the NCAA. And we get into all that kind of stuff and the transfer portal and the good, bad, and the ugly of it, because there's been some good, there's been some bad, and there's been a lot of ugly. So we get into all of that every other week. We've got some really cool guests lined up as well.
Outstanding. And do me a favor, pass on to President Lofton, if you would. This is there's certainly lots of reasons somebody could give for why it took him 10 years to graduate from Texas A&M. I certainly
Doctors.
I certainly had distractions, things that caught my attention. Started a company, whatever. Lots of excuses that I could use, but I like to
Selling
say
brake pads at Callahan's. You spent too much time.
yeah. But something that I that I like to say is that I took 10 years to graduate so that I could get my diploma from Dr. Lofton. So
Yep.
He's
Awesome.
the reason why. Tell him that.
Yep. Good stuff, Dion, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Gabe.
I'll be back on sometime soon. All right.
Outstanding, Gabe. Gig 'em.
There you go.